Hello, everybody. Tara Baklund here. Soy Tara Baklund, o en español a veces es Tara, I'm here with my colleague also.
Hola, yo soy Alberto Carbo. My name is Alberto Carbo.
All right.
Bienvenidos a otro Herbs in Spanglish.
Yes. We are ready to get started with chamomile today. And chamomile, I thought this one would simply be camomila en español, pero no es simplemente camomila, es manzanilla.
Manzanilla.
And usually you have a bit of a history. Do you happen to know why manzanilla? Why not chamomila? Or am I just totally imposing a question that has maybe a complicated answer?
Esta no sé la historia del nombre de la manzanilla. Sí, no sé cuál es la historia, pero es un nombre interesante. Es un nombre. Yeah, I don't know the history behind the name on this one.
It's an interesting name, like in my imagination, and sometimes this is how I remember words in Spanish or other languages, is what they sound or look like. So manzanilla to me is like a little apple, although it does not look like a little apple. So if that helps, it might even actually complicate things for some people. Entonces yo dije es pista en español. Yeah, a tip, pero es más para los quien hablan en inglés, para el español. Vamos.
Sí, pues el nombre latín es Matricaria, entonces suena más parecido a manzanilla. The Latin or the botanical name is Matricaria, so that's a little. It's more similar to manzanilla than chamomile. So maybe that's where it's come from.
Could be, yeah. You know what I've noticed is in a number of these Herbs in Spanglish, we haven't really introduced ourselves much, and maybe this would be a good time. We just tend to jump right in. Entonces, hace 7 episodios de Herbs in Spanglish, pero digamos nuestra historia, pero no todo de nuestras historias. So I'm Tara Baklund. I have learned a ton through herbalism by managing the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism and related sites. That is a quick one-liner introduction. Entonces, yo aprendí mucho del herbalismo por trabajar con Matthew Wood, un herbalista bien conocido por el mundo. Y en estos años que estoy trabajando con él, he aprendido bastante.
Qué chévere. Yo soy Alberto Carbo y soy herborista y también trabajo con Tara y con el Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, el Instituto de Matthew Wood. So yeah, my name is Alberto Carbo and I'm an herbalist and I work with Tara at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism.
And like all of our videos, this is not medical advice, but it is based on a lot of experience, what we've learned, experiences, but we really encourage you to consult with your own medical practitioners and proceed with caution, as with anything in life, right? Now, here's my test each time I get to read in Spanish. Esto no es consejo médico, estos son historias y experiencias personales basadas en tradición. Consulta con un médico para cualquier preocupación o cambio relacionado a su salud. That's like cheating for me. It's like I don't have to think about it so much, but I can tell when I haven't spoken in a while because it's challenging. But anyways, chamomile. Maybe I should have had my cup of chamomile for this one.
Sí, y bueno, para la gráfica que estaba antes, hay muchos tipos de manzanilla, pero los que son reconocidos, digamos, médicamente, son la Matricaria recutita, que es la alemana, y la romana, que es la Anthemis nobilis. So there's many types of chamomile, but the two that are most recognized medicinally are Matricaria recutita, which is the German chamomile, and Roman chamomile, which is Anthemis nobilis.
Very cool. Partes de uso, the parts that you use. I put flowers here, but when I was out doing an herb walk with Matthew the other day, he actually said more specifically the tops. Entonces, parte de uso, yo escribí las flores, usamos las flores, pero cuando estaba grabando un video con Matthew Wood sobre camomila, manzanilla, él dijo que no usamos solamente las flores, porque las flores no son muy grandes o son pequeñas. Entonces usamos lo que es por cima. But I would say flowers is good enough to say. You just don't have to be too particular about just removing the flower. What would you say?
Yeah, I usually tend to grab a bit of the stem as well, and then maybe some top leaves, but primarily go for the flower. Sí, entonces uno puede, cuando está cosechando, recoger la flor, pero sí se lleva un poco el tallo y tal vez una o dos hojitas de la parte de encima, de la parte de arriba de la planta también, pero más que todo, principalmente son las flores.
Uh-huh. Y yo leí el otro día que en el libro de Matthew Wood, I read one of Matthew Wood's books the other day that the fresh versus the dried have a little bit different action. And maybe I'll have you talk about the next Doctrine of Signatures part while I grab that book and find that part, because I thought it was interesting, because it's not all herbs that there's a distinction between using them fresh or dried. Entonces, cuando tú estás enseñando del otro, en la otra foto, por la frente, yo voy a buscar este libro para, porque yo leí en el libro de Matthew Wood del otro día que los usos fresca y seca de la manzanilla tienen resultados diferentes. Entonces, regreso ya. I'll be right back.
Bueno, la doctrina de asignaturas, para los que no han escuchado esa terminología, es un método muy antiguo de identificar los usos medicinales de las plantas. So the doctrine of signatures, for those that don't know, is a very ancient method of recognizing medicinal qualities of plants. And it's really quite simple, but it is something that we're not used to doing too much in our modern day world. So it can be difficult to learn simply because we're not used to thinking in that type of way. Es un proceso simple, pero es tal vez difícil de aprender en nuestro porque contemporáneamente no estamos acostumbrados a pensar de esa manera. And basically, it's looking for ways in which the plant, its colors, its shapes, and the environment that it grows in resemble a body part or an ailment or the condition for which it is good for. So a very easy example is, walnuts are good for your brain, and walnuts look like a brain. So that's a very simple one that most people could have probably noted before, but it can definitely get more complicated. Entonces, la doctrina de asignaturas es cuando uno busca identificar cómo la planta se parece, ya sea la forma de la planta, el color de la planta o el entorno en donde crece, el hábitat, cómo se parece a una persona, a una parte anatómica de una persona o a la condición para la cual es utilizada. Y un ejemplo muy sencillo que mucha gente podría... a la cual mucha gente podría relacionarse es que es por ejemplo, las nueces de nogal, que son buenas para el cerebro, y porque pues las vitaminas y los minerales que tienen, y si uno mira una nuez de nogal, tiene se parece mucho al cerebro. Claro, hay que usar la imaginación un poco. You have to use your imagination a little bit to find the connections. Y bueno, la doctrina de asignaturas de la manzanilla, la verdad, yo no sé cuáles son exactamente, pero queríamos traer la atención y invitarlos a que ustedes mismos vayan y busquen una planta de manzanilla y se sienten con ella y piensen y la observen y vean a qué se parece. So I don't know of any doctrine of signatures specifically for chamomile. However, we wanted to bring this up to encourage people to go and sit with the plant and to observe it and to try and see if any signatures pop out for them. Y claro, acá pusimos que un sol y tiene como una forma de sol y más tarde van a ver que hablamos de la manzanilla, que es para las personas que tienen dolor, las personas que se quejan frecuentemente. Entonces, de algunas maneras, pues el sol nos hace felices y esa podría ser una doctrina. So, although it's not a confirmed one that other people have talked about or I've heard other people talk about, as you will learn later in this presentation, the chamomile is good for people who complain a lot and for people who, are in pain. And as you can see in the picture on the right, chamomile, there's a sun, and the shape kind of resembles, a sun, and sunshine makes us happy. So maybe that's a doctrine of signatures. And anyways, we encourage you to go and sit with the plant and feel it out for yourself.
It's really a journey. The doctrine of signatures is not a hard science. No es una ciencia la doctrina de asignaturas. Es más una experiencia. Entonces aprendes con la experiencia, pero tienes que tomar el tiempo y abrir la mente y a veces la alma de una manera. And so I think to the doctrine of signatures is not a science. It's really based in experience, and it's something you need to take time for and really open up your mind and your spirit and your soul in a way as well. And there's actually a wonderful class on the doctrine of signatures at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, which is free each month. Tenemos una clase de la doctrina de signaturas cada mes en la Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. También hay una hoja para ayudarte a empezar con esta experiencia. So there's also at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism a monthly class that is free to help you get started, a new herb each month. And there's also a handout that you can download that will help you to kind of guide you along as well.
Sí, para los que están viendo en vivo en este momento, la siguiente clase de doctrina de asignaturas es mañana, el 27 de julio del 2023. For those that are watching live right now, or maybe later today, tomorrow is the next Doctrine of Signatures class on Menarda, July 27th, 2023.
We're getting some nice greetings on Facebook. Hello, hola a todos en Facebook por los saludos. Gracias.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Traditional usos tradicionales. It relaxes and relieves tension. As Matthew Wood says, it's for babies of any age. So they're whining, they're crying, complaining. If you think about it, a baby that's kind of crying, is in their own way complaining. Entonces relaja y desvanece. Wow, that's a new word for me. Relieves. La tensión para bebés de cualquier edad, dije Matthew Wood. ¿Quieres decir más sobre esto?
Sí, y eso es suena un poco raro, pero es muy sencillo. O sea, si alguna vez, me imagino, han visto a alguien que se queja constantemente, que suspira a menudo. So it may sound funny, but to hear babies of any age, but it's quite simple, and you've likely seen it before. It's people that complain a lot, and some signs, for example, are when they sigh frequently over, things that maybe are not that big a deal.
That's good to know. How do you say sigh? ¿Cómo se dice sigh en español?
Suspirar.
Suspirar. Yeah. That's interesting. I won't comment on that because we're going to talk about the herbs. It's so true and it's it's humbling. Tienes que ser humilde para saber que eres una persona que necesita camomila o manzanilla por esta razón. So you have to be humble to know, and I'm raising my hand here, to know that you're a person that may or does need this herb. And since we decided to do this herb next for this Herbs in Spanglish, I've certainly been having chamomile more. So desde decir que íbamos a hacer o enseñar sobre esa hierba en este próximo Herbs in Spanglish, yo how would you say, to be with?
Pasar más tiempo.
Pasar más tiempo con manzanilla. Gracias. And it's pretty incredible. Well, let's continue. I have a few stories, but let's just continue. How about, it's cooling, which I found very surprising. Me sorprendió que es cooling, porque normalmente yo no tomo hierbas que son esfriantes o esfriadoras. Normalmente yo no tomo hierbas que son esfriadoras. But Alberto enseñó que es una hierba enfriadora.
Es enfriadora y tiene un poco de amargura, de sabor amargo. También depende cómo la prepares, pero el sabor amargo indica, por lo general, hierbas que son enfriadoras. Entonces, si estás probando alguna otra hierba y tiene un sabor amargo, lo más probable, aunque hay excepciones, es que esa hierba tenga un efecto enfriador. So it does have a bitter taste, and it does depend a bit on how you prepare chamomile, but it does have some bitter principles. And if you, just for general knowledge, if you ever taste a different herb and it has a bitter taste, it is likely going to have a cooling effect. Most bitter herbs are cooling, although, of course, there are exceptions.
So on that note, I found this section in the book. This is Matthew Wood's Earthwise Herbal. Es el libro de Matthew Wood, Earthwise Herbal. This is old world medicinal plants. So las hierbas del mundo viejo. Okay. So the fresh preparation, preserving the volatile oils, are relaxant, whereas the dried preparation are bitter and promote secretions to the stomach, GI, and liver. Preparado fresco preserva no, they aren't grasas, are they? Volatile oils?
Aceites.
Aceites.
Volátiles. Yeah.
Volátiles. And are relaxing, son relajantes, pero preparado seco, entonces la hierba no es fresca, es seca. Son amargas, es amargo y, I don't know, is it promover? Promueve secretions. I don't know that one.
Secreciones.
That makes sense. Del estómago, gastrointestinal, must be some variation of that.
Gastrointestinal.
And hígado is liver, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yay. Okay. So that's really interesting that prepared in a couple different ways, it has very different results. So yeah, that would be fun to experiment. Sería interesante hacer un experimento, preparar la manzanilla fresca y seca.
Sí, y pues por lo general yo en mi práctica preparo la manzanilla fresca en tintura. So in general, in my practice, I prepare the fresh chamomile as a tincture and use the dried herb more as a tea or an infusion. Y la hierba seca la uso más como en infusión.
¿Tú tienes tus 2 bebés? ¿Has usado la manzanilla mucho con ellos? You have 2
Sí.
children, little children. Do you use chamomile much with them?
Yes, it has definitely come in very handy. And that's the part where you want to determine when they are, quote unquote, being a baby, even though they're always a baby at that age. So, entonces, cuando lo he usado para mis hijos, y es importante determinar cuándo están actuando como un bebé, aunque eran de la edad de bebé. And it's, I use it, for example, when my daughter was teething, as well as in colic. And, babies cry. Babies, they're not always happy. Crying is their way of communication as well. So, especially when they're very young. So in this particular case, she was being fussy. She was being, not settling for nap. And it was after a while where we determined, okay, this is not usual. She's not normally this fuzzy, this fussy, I should say.
Very different meanings.
Yeah, I always mess those up.
That would be a good one to explain for Herbs in Spanglish. She's not peluda, she's...
Sí, en inglés se dice fuzzy, es peludo, y fuzzy, no, fussy, es como que inquieto, quejándose. Entonces, after a while, we realized, okay, this is more than the regular cry. So and there were other signs, of course, that she was in discomfort. And so after trying, her mom breastfed her and, singing her a song and all the things that would normally work and get her to fall asleep, we realized, okay, no, this is not. And so we did chamomile infusion and it worked like a charm.
I'm sorry, I'm remembering a story that I'm going to laugh right now and you keep telling your story. I'm sorry.
Y bueno, en español, entonces con mi hija, cuando era bien chiquita, de mes y medio, tenía cólico y tratando de acostarla para una siesta, se estaba quejando, estaba inquieta, y después de intentar los métodos normales para calmarla, para tranquilizarla, como pues la mamá le dio leche, cantarle una canción, y por lo general eso funcionaba, nos dimos cuenta, ok, y pues se estaba moviendo, inquieta, entonces, ok, está haciendo un bebé, está quejándose, está haciendo así, y entonces ahí dijimos, ok, se usa la manzanilla, y en ese caso tenía mes y medio, no quería darle ninguna cantidad de alcohol, obviamente, entonces hice una infusión de manzanilla con la hoja, además era invierno, entonces infusión con la hoja, con las flores secas, y solo 5 minutos de infusión. Después de 5 minutos se empieza a poner más y más amarga la infusión. Entonces 5 minutos se cuela y después con una jeringa, claro, después de enfriar la infusión con una jeringa, le dimos como menos de 1 mililitro, como 10 gotas probablemente. Y se tranquilizó y se durmió. And so it was winter. My daughter was not going down for a nap. We realized, okay, it's more than the usual um, uh, fuzziness.
Fuzzy.
Fussiness.
There you go.
Thank
I'm
you.
try to come up with a trick for you to remember.
Thank you. And so we decided, okay, it's time to bring out the chamomile. Of course, I didn't want to give her any alcohol. She was only a month and a half old. And so we made a chamomile infusion, also with the dried flowers, of course. It was also winter, so no way to get fresh flowers. And we infused the flowers for 5 minutes in boiling water, strain it, let it cool, and then with a syringe, we gave her about 10 drops. And she, within a couple minutes, she was calm, she was tranquil, and she fell asleep.
Boy, so many parents would pay lots of money just to know that one tip, right? And I think what you, the way you gestured, that says a lot. Like babies really communicate, and los bebés sí comunican, no pueden comunicar por palabras, entonces comunican por llorar, gritar y cómo se mueve el cuerpo. Yeah, that's incredible. So I'm sorry if it seemed rude. As you were telling the story about your daughter, this is a humble moment. Esto es un momento humilde. And you were talking about how she's like, wasn't just being a baby, there was something more to it. No estaba solamente un bebé en aquel momento. Tuvo más de su situación. There's more to her situation, what was going on. Anyways, about a week ago, my husband and I were driving down the road, and there was construction, and I was already kind of on edge, and he went through a construction zone. Now, whether that is illegal or not, I don't technically know, but I was uncomfortable. Entonces, la semana atrás estaba en el coche, en el carro con mi marido, y ya estaba en how would you say, in a mood?
Estaba de cierto humor.
Cierto, ¿cómo?
Humor.
Humor, sí. Y ya estaba, ya no quería una aventura. Y él pasó por un sitio it is construction, right?
Ajá.
Construcción. Y yo no sé si era legal, ilegal, no sé, pero no no sentía bien con esto. I didn't feel good about this. And his joke was espiada en español.
Chiste.
Chiste, that's right. Was, like the trucks aren't moving fast. They're not going to hurt us. I'm just going to tell them my wife wants her coffee and wants something to eat. And entonces su chiste era, mi mujer solamente quiere su café, algo para comer. And then entonces los, how would you say the workers that are working there?
Los trabajadores.
Los trabajadores iban decían en su mente, pásale, rápido, ándale. And so the joke is that if my husband was saying, I need to get my wife coffee, she's hungry, then the construction workers in his mind, in the imaginary situation, would say, move on through, keep going, go, get her coffee and her food. And so as you were telling the story about your daughter, complaining, and the leche wasn't working, it was like, yeah, I needed my leche, and I needed whatever was going to appease me. I needed chamomile, claramente necesitaba manzanilla, no solamente café. Necesitaba más de leche como su hija.
Y bueno, yo he tenido momentos así con mi esposa, cuando ella está tal vez un poco estresada o por alguna razón que, en mi opinión, no es, no es tan problemática y he dicho, tal vez unas gotitas de manzanilla. So that has happened to me with my wife, where she's maybe been stressing out over something that I don't find a big deal. And I've said, a bit jokingly, but also seriously, like, hey, maybe just a couple drops of chamomile may help. And it does.
That's so funny. Muy chistoso. That was a good story time moment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've already talked about this a little bit. Y ya platicamos sobre esto un poquito, pero en varias maneras que puede usar la manzanilla. There are various ways that you can use chamomile or chamomile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so as I said, fresh flowers in the growing season, you can tincture them, and you can it keeps for quite a while, so that's great. You can, if you live in a place where there's winter, have it throughout the winter. But you can dry the flowers and then use those as an infusion. And as Matthew Wood says, they do, the bitterness comes out a lot more in the dried flowers, and the more nervine qualities are more present in the fresh flower preparation. That being said, like in the story with my daughter, I didn't have access to fresh flowers because I only had it in tincture and I didn't want to give her alcohol. So I used the dried ones, and it still worked. So, but the caveat would be steep it for 5 minutes only. Entonces, la tintura se puede hacer de las flores frescas y de la parte más arriba de la planta cuando esté creciendo afuera. Y las flores se pueden secar o comprar secas para usar en infusión. Y como dice Matthew Wood, el sabor amargo es más presente en la infusión, en las flores secas. Entonces, y las propiedades que ayudan al sistema nervioso son más presentes en la flor fresca. Pero como la historia que les conté, cuando mi hija estaba inquieta y no quería darle alcohol porque era muy chiquita, no tenía acceso a flores frescas, le di una infusión de flores secas y todavía funcionó, pero el truco es infusar solo por 5 minutos, porque más de 5 minutos se pone bastante amargo. It gets quite bitter after 5 minutes.
Indeed, it does.
Uh-huh. Y bueno, se puede usar en ensaladas o tal vez en otros platos. No la he usado en otros platos, pero you can use it in salads and maybe other dishes. I haven't personally done it in other dishes, but they're nice to put in salads.
Mm-hmm. Looks pretty too.
Mm-hmm.
Bonito también. Como usar, you can also try, there are many other ways to use chamomile or manzanilla. También puedes probar varias otras maneras de usarla, como en oil, aceites, salves, ungüento, linimento, hydrosol, hidrosol, flower essence, esencias florales, essential oils, aceites esenciales. And so there's really so many ways to use chamomile. It really depends on the situation. Depende de la situación. Hay muchas maneras como se puede usar la manzanilla.
Mm-hmm. Sí, los invitamos a explorar. We invite you to explore. And always when you're learning about herbs, pick one preparation and use it for a week, 2 weeks, and let it assess how it makes you feel and how your body reacts to it, and then you'll learn from an experiential experience what it is good for. Siempre para las hierbas, cuando uno está tratando de aprender, es escoger una preparación y usarla frecuentemente o a menudo o repetidas veces durante 1 o 2 semanas o más tiempo también, y asesorar cómo te hace sentir, y así de una forma visceral vas a aprender cómo usar la planta y para qué sirve.
And it really helps to have a group that you can interact with. Ayuda mucho tener una comunidad con quien puede comunicar sobre sus experiencias, that you can communicate about your experiences and learn from others. It's nice to have a time where you experience it yourself and then at a certain point share. Similar with the doctrine of signatures. It's such an experience. También como la doctrina de asignaturas es como una experiencia. Es bueno tener su experiencia y después de un tiempito o un tiempo share. Why did I forget the word share?
Compartir.
Compartir, gracias, con otros en una comunidad. And so we have a community at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism as well. And if you're not into social media, it's private. Entonces tenemos una comunidad con quien puedes compartir en el Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. Es como las redes sociales, pero no es una red social, es más privado. So you might be wondering, where can I find this herb? Entonces, es probable que estás pensando cómo puedo encontrar con esta hierba. And you can use it fresh, dried, prepared. Puedes usarla fresca, seca, preparada. It's definitely in the gardens, in jardines, the grocery store, mercado, and online. It's very widely available, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very common. It's even available in markets in South America, all over the place. Yo la he visto mucho yo la he visto en jardines, en mercados en Sudamérica, vendida como hierba. Entonces se puede encontrar fácilmente, incluso en bolsitas de té. Even if you just get tea bags and that's the only way you can find it, you can still find it.
Yeah. And that's why sometimes when you see, like in Matthew Wood's books, Old World, this is the Old World book, you'll see them in the New World. So the New World, entonces cuando ves un libro como Matthew Wood que diga son hierbas o plantas del mundo viejo, sí es una hierba del mundo viejo como en Europa, en este área, pero fue usado, transportado tanto que también tenemos la hierba hoy en día en las Américas también. So you'll see in this book that it says Old World medicinal plants, and you'll be like, whoa, I don't live in the Old World, Europe, in those older world regions. But a lot of these plants have made their way to the Americas, either by transporting them, or they're just so commonly used, they become, for example, a garden plant would be another example. So this herb is generally quite safe, but as always, we encourage you to check with your medical provider that you see and trust when you're experimenting with herbs.
Sí, el uso es bastante sano y salvo, no hay muchas contraindicaciones, pero siempre asegúrense de hablar con su doctor antes de usar cualquier planta medicinal, y acuérdense que su salud es su responsabilidad.
Exacto. All right, so in history, we've covered some of these, but it's worth repeating. So it's for babies of all ages, and we get that from Matthew Wood. Para bebés de cualquier edad. It's for complaining, sighing often, low pain tolerance, colic, teething, or a wife that needs her café con leche. And so that would be quejándose a menudo, suspiros frecuentes. I can't see past my other one. My slideshow thing is in the way. Tolerancia must be bajo tolerancia al dolor, cólico, dolor al salir los dientes.
Yeah, and that's another way I've used it. The same infusion, 5-minute chamomile infusion from the dry flowers that I used for colic for my baby girl also worked for teething. Again, I didn't use it the whole time she was teething, only when she was so uncomfortable that you have to wait for that point where she's so uncomfortable that kind of nothing else is working. Entonces, la misma infusión de 5 minutos de la que hablé para el cólico que usé para mi hija, también la usé para cuando le estaban saliendo los dientes, pero no todo el tiempo que le estaban saliendo los dientes, sino en el momento en el que su inquietud, su dolor era más elevado y más agudo, y cuando nada más estaba funcionando. Y en ese momento, igual que con el cólico, unas 10 gotitas y paró de quejarse, se tranquilizó y se calmó. And so same idea, the 10 drops as for colic, in that moment where nothing else was working, and she's soon thereafter was calm and stopped complaining.
Excellent. So that was an overview of chamomile. I just said it, chamomile. I always say chamomile, but there you go. You can say it both ways. En inglés puede decir chamomile o chamomile. And there's so much more to these plants. I mean, these are great overviews and a great start. Entonces, es solamente los básicos sobre las hierbas. Hay mucho más para aprender, pero si quieres aprender más, claro que tenemos el Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. Es un buen recurso. So at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism is a great resource to learn more. And we encourage you to check it out.
Muchas gracias por sintonizarse otra vez a Herbs in Spanglish. Espero que sigan aprendiendo mucho sobre las plantas y explorando, que es algo muy lindo. Thanks for tuning in once again to Herbs in Spanglish, and I hope you keep exploring and learning about plants. It's a beautiful thing.
And at least you can help babies of every age. Puede ayudar a los bebés de cada edad, cualquier edad. Thank you so much. Leave a note. We love hearing from you. Deja un comentario. We like hearing from you. And thanks for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it, Alberto. You really, although it was satisfying that I can teach you the difference between fuzzy and fussy.
Yeah. I always mess it up. It happens. It's one of those words that still I can't. It just in the moment I say it wrong.
It could be worse. There are worse words to mix up. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Bueno, gracias. Ciao.
Adios.
See everyone later.